Presentation is brought to you by Aetna and the Kentucky Autism Training Center. I'm Bev Harp with University of Kentucky's Human Development Institute, and I'll be talking about one of our projects, Innovative Supports for Autistic Workers, and how family members and other supporters can help to support an autistic job seeker. ISAW is a training and consultation project primarily serving employers. We also provide training for employment specialists, OVR staff, direct support workers, and more. We consult with businesses to ensure that they have the accurate information they need to provide accommodations and the skills they need to supervise and retain autistic workers. We offer site visits to increase understanding of accessibility needs. We do offer some supports for job seekers as well as autistic people who are employed but may be struggling or at risk of losing their jobs. Additionally, we provide downloadable resources such as infographics and fact sheets at our website, isaw.hdiouk.org. All training is written and conducted by autistic staff. We take an individualized approach, not only to the person with a disability, but for businesses as well. We will customize trainings to fit the needs of any employer. Just provide us with the questions you would like answered and let us know if you'd like a Zoom or an in-person training or a recording to share with supervisory staff. Our latest initiative is a fully online training course, Autism Informed Employers. This HDI learning course is about 3.5 hours long and can be taken at the employer's own convenience. We have modules on understanding autism, interviewing, accessibility, supported employment, and much more. The online training features scenarios for practice and multiple suggestions for supports. If you're watching this training, you are most likely aware that autism is a disability that features communication differences, as well as differences in social needs and security needs, or the need for sameness and repetition. It is important to understand that autism is not just the co-occurrence of these qualities, that it is not a checklist of behaviors to be remediated, but a syndrome of differences resulting from observable differences in the brain. Brain scans show many differences between autistic and typical brains. For example, the corpus callosum is a bundle of fibers separating the left and right hemispheres of the brain. In autistic people, the corpus callosum tends to be considerably thinner than average. Differences in the hippocampus have been observed as well, and these may account for some of the memory differences we see in autistic people. Scans of autistic children's brains have also showed a larger amygdala. This is important as it's where our fight, flight, freeze responses are generated. This spectrum cartoon features Earl responding to an interviewer's question about their strengths. "Well, I don't mean to brag," Earl responds, "but my amygdala is huge." Researchers have observed that autistic people consistently experience physical discomfort and anxiety as a result of sensory issues. This is important to keep in mind as we think about the stresses autistic people encounter in navigating a world not designed for us. Perhaps the most significant brain difference to be aware of is hyperconnectivity. In early childhood, and to a lesser extent continuing, our brains are constantly adding and deleting neural connections. As the brain figures out what it will be used for most, it strengthens those areas, while pathways that are not being used are removed. This is what happens in the typical brain. Autistic brains do far less of this pruning, so we are left with many more connectors than neurotypical people have. Research suggests that hyperconnectivity plays a strong role in the sensory perceptions and cognition of autistic people. Autistic brains have qualities that are different from neurotypical brains. Some of these are perceived as negative by society, and some as positive. In the workplace, challenges related to core autism traits may need to be addressed through accommodations. Most challenges fall into the categories of sensory needs, social needs, communication, executive functioning, and hidden rules. Hidden rules are those workplace customs or understandings that employees are expected to pick up easily without direct instruction. For example, Is this an office where it's okay to reheat fish in the microwave? If I have a question for my supervisor, should I send it immediately or compile all questions and save till the end of the day? Is it okay to always be 10 minutes late like I was at my last job, or is that going to be a problem here? The accommodations most often requested by autistic workers include a quiet workspace, lighting alternatives other than fluorescent or super bright lights, detailed work lists, text-based communication, schedule adjustments or flex time, working from home, being excused from some meetings, support with organizational tasks, reminders, and sometimes job customization options. Autistic employees report that they have unmet needs in the workplace, mostly in the areas of social differences and hidden rules. Formal accommodations are based on the rights outlined in the Americans with Disabilities Act. Each workplace has a process for requesting accommodations. Most require a letter from a healthcare professional to be provided to Human Resources. If requested for the documented disability, accommodations must be provided. However, they do not have to be exactly what the employee has asked for. Ideally, there is a process of negotiation, but the employer will make the final decision about what the accommodations will be. In some smaller businesses or agencies, an employee can sometimes work out some of their accommodations needs with a direct supervisor. Coworkers can be empowered to act as natural supports in companies with more flexible culture. I've talked a little bit about sensory supports already, as far as the quiet environment and non-fluorescent lighting, but to provide a bit more detail, many autistic workers benefit from having a variety of seating options, adequate personal space, and the ability to move freely as needed. Some may also need a scent-free area, a workspace free of distracting visual elements, or adjustment to uniform policies. Executive functioning supports are no less important. Autistic workers respond to clear and detailed instructions delivered in the employee's best mode of communication, whether that is by speech, email, or a weekly written work list. Deadlines should be clear. Flexibility is appreciated, but projects with open-ended deadlines are likely to be delayed indefinitely. Autistic workers generally do best when given as much information as possible, including the reasons behind a request or process. Understanding the reasons makes the task easier to remember and to prioritize. An autistic employee or one who has ADHD may need reminders. Calendar apps are not a great resource unless someone is available and willing to assist with the setup. If a person having consistent difficulty in meeting deadlines, they are likely to also have difficulty setting up or remembering to use the app. Regular check-ins with supervisors are a must for most autistic workers. These should include direct and honest feedback and should be scheduled in advance. Here's an example of how a supervisor might address a problem with an employee. Trevor is a graphic designer with communication and sensory differences who also struggles with anxiety. He attends weekly meetings at his advertising firm, but is unable to actively participate. As an accommodation, Trevor is authorized to attend these meetings virtually, and inclusive strategies are implemented. These strategies could include the use and careful monitoring of a chat box as an alternative to speech, plain language documents, pausing between topics or statements, providing an agenda 48 hours in advance, and a group understanding of autistic communication differences. Above all, autistic workers need good autism-informed policies, practices, and people. Autism-friendly policies might include flexible hours, remote work hours, and paid mental health or self-care days, in addition to traditional sick leave. Some practices, such as the use of clear and direct language, mentoring for new hires, and timely specific feedback, can be very helpful. One place where autistic and neurotypical workers tend to agree is on the primary importance of people around us. Autistic workers need supervisors and coworkers who understand autism, value inclusion, and appreciate diversity. Here are a few tips for family members and other supporters who are helping an autistic person looking for a job. I'll also be talking directly to these job seekers. It's a good idea to become familiar with your rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act and other laws pertaining to disability. Kentucky is an employment-first state. What this means is that when you seek assistance from the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, they cannot place you in a sub-minimum wage job, often known as a workshop or sheltered workshop or training center, but they must make efforts to prepare you for a fully paid competitive position in an integrated workplace. Under the ADA, people with disabilities have several protections. Employers cannot ask if you have a disability during the interview process. They are only allowed to ask if you can complete the tasks of the job either with or without accommodations. Whether or not you share your disability status with the interviewer is up to you. If you do bring it up, they will then be allowed to ask questions about it. But if you don't want to disclose at this point, that's fine, and it will not stop you from asking for accommodations once you are hired. If you or your autistic family member had an IEP in high school, you should already be aware of some services offered by Kentucky's Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. OVR professionals order or administrate tests to determine aptitude and interests as they relate to employment. They can also order technology assessments as needed. You will be assigned a specific counselor. OVRs will sometimes pay for college or university classes if they are necessary for the employment you are pursuing, and they believe it is a fit for your abilities. You might be paired with an employment specialist. The employment specialist assists with the job search and provides on-the-job training and support when you are hired. They can help you negotiate needed accommodations or modifications to the work. The employment specialist will meet with you several times to understand your interests and explore different paths to employment. To learn more about this process, called supported employment, visit Kentucky's Supported Employment Training Project. Links will be provided at the end of this presentation. You may wonder if OVR is right for your needs. There are 4 requirements for eligibility. The person must have a physical or mental impairment. The impairment must result in substantial impediment to employment. An individual must be able to benefit from vocational rehabilitation services in terms of employment outcome. An individual must require vocational rehabilitation services in order to obtain or maintain appropriate employment. When there are not enough counselors to serve everyone, OVRs follow an order of selection, and some categories may be placed on waiting lists. Category 1 comprises eligible individuals with the most significant disabilities that have limitations in 3 or more major areas of functional limitations. Category 2 is eligible individuals with most significant disabilities that have limitations in 2 major areas of functional limitations. Category 3 is the same but with 1 major area of functional limitations. And Category 4 is considered a non-significant disability. That would be not having any areas of functional limitations. An OVR counselor would conduct an evaluation to determine what category you might fall into. If you are interested in supporting job-seeking skills, making a decision about the type of work and where to apply might be a good place to start. Most autistic people have high anxiety, and this is not conducive to decision-making. They may also have less experience than typical people of the same age. They are less likely to have held part-time jobs during high school, and more likely to have been seen through a lens of low expectations. For these reasons, it is a good idea to talk with the autistic person frequently about the variety of jobs available, and maybe some pros and cons of each. Be aware, though, that some autistic folks will bristle at the idea of having help with decisions. This is understandable too, given that they have likely had difficult conversations around decision making in the past. Respect the person's need to process information with you or alone. If they do prefer working on their own, you might suggest that they add a note to an app or notebook whenever they are out shopping, accessing healthcare, or at a recreational venue, and have the thought, I could do that job. If they wish to brainstorm with you, talk in general about the kinds of jobs you think might be suited to the person's interests and talents. Do not try to push the person in your preferred direction. This is likely to backfire or else to discourage independent thinking. Some of us love to go behind the scenes and see how jobs are done before committing. An autistic person thinking of getting a job might want to read or watch videos about the job responsibilities and working conditions. Being able to visit a potential workplace a couple of times before applying can be helpful. Here are some more suggestions for helping with job indecision. If you or the family member you're supporting have dream jobs that you think are impossible to achieve, it's a place to start. Make a list of what they would do if there were no barriers. Then think about the aspects of those jobs that appeal to the person. Do they want to wear a certain uniform or have their own office? Maybe they are drawn to jobs working outdoors or would prefer to work with a small team of 1 or 2 other people. Make a list of these qualities. Now we have some information we can use to imagine other jobs that meet the same criteria. I hear a lot of autistic people say that they want to be librarians, for example, but those jobs can be difficult to find. If they are interested in the library because of their love of books and learning, the quietness of the space, and opportunities to be around people who love the same things, they might also enjoy working in a bookstore or as support staff at a university or college. They might be interested in pursuing a career as a researcher, writer, or editor. If they like the idea of a community space that is not overly focused on spending and making money, they might like working at a local parks department or recreation center. Another very popular job goal for autistic youth is video game designer. While this is still a difficult field to enter without a degree, jobs for app developers are on the rise and require many of these same skills. This person might also consider graphic design or IT work. They might be an expert in a wide range of games and want to try submitting some freelance articles to magazines or websites. Others may find that working as a clerk or stocker in a video game store is a good first job. I've only worked with one person who wanted to be a spy. He liked the idea of having a secret identity and having information others might not know. He found part-time work as a secret shopper, reporting on employees who were not following the policies of their public-facing jobs. As you develop your list, keep in mind those things that might be deal breakers for the autistic person. Perhaps they cannot tolerate noise, smells, or the fabric used in some uniforms. These factors are as important as the tasks the employee is required to perform. Well, you probably already know that when an autistic person has decided on something, changing course can be very difficult. So what if you or your family member really wants to be a game designer and will not consider any other work? It is best to presume competence and to show that you believe in the person's ability. You might find evidence that suggests this job is not going to be a good fit. Review the information you have, such as grades from technology or math courses, and examples of programming tasks they have completed. If the person is eligible to attend college, planning for that would be a good next step. If not, you might look into community or continuing education courses, or see if your local library has a club or group for young adults interested in technology. Such groups can help youth discover new skills while pursuing a strong interest, and can also be a good place to make contacts who might be aware of related jobs or even job openings. Maybe the young adult has already chosen a path that will require higher education. There are a few options to consider. Attending a university can be expensive, and the admissions policies are usually stricter than they are for community college. If smaller classes are a priority, a community college might be a good bet. But if the student wants to try living on campus, that's an easier situation to find at a state university. Services offered by disability services and availability of groups for neurodivergent students or clubs exploring the student's favorite interest are also some things to consider. As many as 40% of autistic people also have an intellectual disability. This doesn't mean that they are necessarily excluded from having a college experience. There are federally funded programs under SEPSI that offer these opportunities to students who have intellectual disabilities. In Kentucky, the Supported Higher Education Project operates programs at Murray State, Northern Kentucky University, Owensboro and Bluegrass Community and Technical Colleges, and at the University of Kentucky. To learn more, use the links provided at the end of this video. Finally, there are some colleges and universities that operate their own autism-specific programs, sometimes providing life skills instructions as well as academic courses. Western Kentucky University houses the Kelly Autism Center, which offers programs for school-age students as well as college students. Autistic people are well known for having intense and specialized interests. Some people want jobs that are related to these interests. Others prefer to keep the things that bring them joy separate from their need to earn a wage. If you are supporting someone, follow their lead on this. They most likely have a good sense of whether a job in their area of interest is just what they need, or if it would drain the joy they currently find through engaging with the interest. However, you will also want to think about skills that have been developed during the course of a specialized interest. Maybe they have become very proficient at internet searches, or have developed their own ways of categorizing information. Have they developed amazing fine motor skills from gaming? Think about the jobs that require these skills and add them to your list of possibilities. When deciding on a type of work, it is a good idea to think about the person's sensory profile. Work with the autistic job seeker to identify sensory sensitivities that can interfere with activities, from chores to recreation. You do not need to put them in a pie chart or any particular format. You can list them out. I've used colors here and shading to indicate the relative intensity of each hyper and hypo sensitivity. On the chart, blue indicates high sensitivity and orange represents low sensitivity. The darker the shade, the more intense the hypo or hypersensitivity. At a glance, we can see that this person needs a quiet and uncluttered setting. They are mildly affected by bright lights. They may tolerate some unpleasant smells, but should not work in a fish cannery, as their smell section is light to medium blue. The person requires ample personal space, as indicated by the dark blue touch segment. They experience low interoception, which means they're not always aware of physical needs such as hunger and thirst. They have mild issues with proprioception, which is the intuitive understanding of where their body is in space. Using this knowledge, we can rule out some types of jobs in some settings. This doesn't mean that this person could never succeed in a job where the conditions are noisy or cluttered, but they probably are not the best first choice. Here are some important tips for autistic job seekers based on my work with both job seekers and employers. First, you need a resume. If this is going to be your first job, include volunteer positions, education, awards and honors received, and a one-sentence personal statement. The statement should indicate one or two of your strengths and the type of job you are seeking to fill. For example, responsible and detail-oriented high school graduate seeks entry-level position as a warehouse worker. It is important that the resume look polished and that it is free of errors. Autistic job seekers in Kentucky are welcome to submit resumes to ISOL for review. Job applications are often online. Sometimes they will list an optional cover letter as something you can submit. If you are able to do so, it is always best to submit the cover letter. This is especially important if your writing skills exceed your speaking ability, or if you find interviews particularly stressful. This is your chance to tell the employer about the reasons you would make a good employee. There are some rules of thumb for cover letters. Don't include the same facts that are in your resume. You would not write, for example, "I worked at Kroger for 6 years," because they will learn that from your resume. You might, however, want to say something like, "During my time as a stock person at Kroger, I learned many valuable organizational skills and the importance of excellent customer service." The cover letter should be addressed to the correct person. If a hiring manager is named in the listing, or you know it, use their last name. Either "Dear John Smith" or "Dear Mr. Smith" is fine. "Dear John" is not. If there is no name listed, and you don't have a way of finding the person's name, then you can write "Dear Hiring Manager" or "To the Hiring Manager." If you've been scheduled for an interview, congratulations! Use a checklist to make sure you bring the items you need with you to the interview. At a minimum, these will include your license or identification card, 2 or 3 copies of your resume, a list of references in case you are asked for them, and a pen and paper to write with. If you struggle with being on time, be sure you have the support you need to get out the door. Ask for any support you need in advance, whether it is a ride to the interview or someone to practice questions with you. If you are going alone, be sure you know how to get there and how long it will take. Have an idea what you will wear. Try to visit the place you are applying or look at their website to get an idea what employees wear. The way you need to dress depends on the type of job you are seeking, but in any case, do not wear shorts, tank tops, or crop tops, flip-flops, or sweats. Whatever you wear must be clean and free of holes. Finally, decide whether or not you will disclose your disability before or during the interview. Whether or not to disclose can be a tough decision. Here are a few questions that might help you decide. Do people who meet you usually assume that you are autistic or that you have a disability? If so, disclosing might be in your favor. Will you need accommodations for the interview? Communication considerations, questions in advance, an employment specialist present, or one interviewer as opposed to a team? In this case, you will need to disclose. Do you find that people are more comfortable talking to you when they know you're autistic than when they do not? This would be an indicator to consider disclosing. Do you feel more confident when the person you're talking to knows? If yes, consider disclosing. If no, don't disclose. Do you believe that you would be rejected if you disclosed your disability? Then do not disclose your disability, but you also might want to consider whether you would be happy working there. Remember, you don't have to disclose your disability before being hired. You can ask for accommodations at any time after being hired. If you are supporting an autistic person who is seeking work, here are some things that you should know to help them with this decision. Some autistic people will need help recognizing whether or not they pass as neurotypical. Give them your honest opinion and let them make the decisions they need to make. Disclosure is often a good option for autistic people who are generally considered awkward or socially disinterested. This is supported by research showing that disclosure can increase the autistic person's chances of being hired. Some managers appreciate the honesty and the fact that the person wants to work. However, there are cases where this is not the best move. For example, if the job seeker feels ashamed or embarrassed about having a disability, the disclosure is less likely to bring good results. Work on developing a positive disability identity first. Self-advocacy groups are a great place to meet autistic adults who share life problems and solutions with one another. These kinds of mutual support groups help autistic people feel less alone and offer opportunities to learn skills that will work for them. A self-advocacy group should be led by disabled people themselves, not parents or professionals. If there is no group in your area, explore the availability of online support groups. Reading books and articles by other autistic self-advocates is a good way to get started towards self-advocacy and a positive identity. When it comes to the actual interview, here are some things you should know. Most interviews include ambiguous, open-ended questions. They are intended to learn as much about your personality and style as your ability to do the job. If you are disclosing that you have a disability, you can ask for reasonable accommodations for the interview. You can ask for one interviewer rather than a few. You can ask to bring a supporter with you. One request that has gained some traction over the past few years is asking for questions in advance. Many employers will still balk at this, but it is worth asking. They can choose to send you the questions or only a few of them, or just the general topics, or they can decline. One of the worst parts of the interview process is the personality inventory. These are tests full of tricky questions that are meant to measure your honesty, reliability, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. They do not actually serve that function for autistic people, who tend to approach questions differently. If you are disclosing, you can ask for these to be waived. However, it is unusual for corporations that use these tests to agree. It is a good idea to practice interview questions, as well as some of the questions known to be on these personality inventories. Innovative Supports for Autistic Workers offers mock interviews for autistic job seekers on request, where you can practice with a friend or family member. So if an autistic job seeker asks you to practice interview skills with them, here are some things you can do. There are many sources online for common interview questions. Choose from these lists of questions the ones that you think the person might encounter and that they might need to work on. For each question, explain what the employer is really wanting to know. For example, if an interviewer asks, "What did you do at your last job?" they are wanting to know about your main responsibilities. This question is not about why you left or were let go from the job. A good way to go about this is to look at the description of the job you had and name the major responsibilities. That way you will be sure to stick to what the interviewer expects. Here, the interviewee has responded, "I collected tickets at a movie theater and directed customers to the correct area. During shows, I vacuumed the floor and restocked the candy. I was also responsible for ordering cleaning supplies each month." Perfect. And what about social skills? As a family member supporting an autistic job seeker, you may worry that their ability to mimic neurotypical social skills is lacking. Many autistic adults have experienced social skills training programs. Some have found these helpful, while others feel that they are insulting and infantilizing. Autistic people need to know that their autonomy and choices are valid and should be honored. Rather than telling them what they should do, you might try this approach. Explain the expectations other people might have in the situation. Explain some of the ways others might respond to the expectation not being met. This approach respects autistic neurology and personal autonomy. In this example, the autistic applicant can choose between greeting the interviewer with a nod, which is his usual way of saying hello. If he does this, the interviewer may think he is rude and not give him the job. The job seeker might instead choose to offer a traditional greeting or handshake, smile, and saying hello. If he does this, the interviewer will probably like him more. However, if he gets the job, he may find that the pressure to keep up the act is too stressful. He may decide that he needs a job where he can bring his full self to work every day. Finally, family and friends will want to be aware of the stress job hunting places on the autistic person and the effects of repeated rejection. Autistic people face a lot of rejection in life and in applying for work. This is one of the factors contributing to widespread depression among autistic adults. People with mobility disabilities don't get told that they should try harder to work. It is unlikely that a deaf applicant would be told, "Come back when you get a cochlear implant." Autistic people are among the few expected to overcome core features of their disability to be accepted. Of course, this is unfair. It might help the job seeker to be reminded that you are aware of this unfairness and that you are on their side. As a society, we need to do better. But there is also a lot we can do as individuals to create a more autism-friendly world. Here, links are provided for your convenience. Understand the signs of depression for autistic youth and young adults, as these can be a bit different than they are for neurotypical youth. Encourage membership in peer support and self-advocacy groups. These have been shown to reduce loneliness and increase self-esteem. If counseling is needed, consider a neurodivergent therapist or one who is neurodiversity affirming. Include autistic people everywhere, in everything. You can find more resources at the Autism Crisis Center. And here are the links to resources mentioned in this video. Links can be accessed from the slide or from the transcript. If you would like to know even more, here are the references used in developing this presentation. Thank you for taking the time to watch this training. Innovative Supports for Autistic Workers is a project of the University of Kentucky's Human Development Institute. We are funded by Kentucky's Office of Vocational Rehabilitation and the Kentucky Office of Autism. Contact me at baharp2@uky.edu or visit our website isaw.hdиuk.org.